I'm 42 years old, married for almost 13 years, father of two kids who still think their parents know what they're doing, or at least they did. I'm writing this from a throwaway account because there are some things you don't ever want tied to your real name. Some truths don't need faces. Before everything fell apart, my life was painfully normal, boring even, in a good way. I had a steady job, a wife I trusted completely, and a family routine that revolved around school pickups, grocery lists, and arguing over what to watch after the kids went to bed. We weren't perfect, but we were solid, or at least I thought we were. My wife and I met in our late 20s. She was warm, sharp, sarcastic in a way that made you feel chosen. We built a life brick by brick, house, kids, holidays, shared jokes that didn't make sense to anyone else. She knew my flaws, I knew hers, or I thought I did. My brother has always been part of that picture. Younger than me by 3 years. Charismatic. The kind of guy people gravitate toward without knowing why. We were close growing up, drifted a bit as adults, but family events always brought us back together. Birthdays, BBQs, picnics. That's the part that haunts me now. How normal everything felt right before it wasn't. I replay those memories constantly, looking for cracks I missed, signs I ignored because trusting the people you love feels safer than questioning them. Back then, I didn't know I was already standing on the edge of something that would break my family apart. Looking back, the worst part isn't what happened. It's how long it was happening right in front of me while I convinced myself everything was fine. My brother started coming around more after he split from his girlfriend. Nothing dramatic, just one of those quiet breakups where everyone pretends they're okay. He didn't have kids. He had time. He'd swing by after work, help with yard stuff, play with my kids, stay for dinner. My wife encouraged it. She always said family mattered, that our kids should grow up close to their uncle. At first, I appreciated it. He made her laugh. He helped when I was tired. He filled in the gaps I didn't even realize were there. There were small things, too small to accuse anyone of anything. Inside jokes that didn't include me. Long conversations that would trail off when I entered the room. My wife checking her phone more often, smiling at texts she'd turn face down when I asked who it was. I remember once joking, "What, you got a secret admirer?" She laughed too quickly and said I was paranoid. I believed her. That's the thing about trust. It makes you stupid, or generous, or blind. I'm still not sure which. At family gatherings, they'd sit next to each other. Nothing inappropriate, just close. I told myself I was projecting, that I was insecure, that marriage meant trusting even when your gut whispered otherwise. There was a picnic planned for early summer, one of those extended family things at a park by the lake. Food, kids running around, folding chairs, cheap wine in plastic cups. My brother offered to drive separately and bring the grill. My wife insisted we all go together. That day felt ordinary. Sunburns, laughter, my kids chasing bubbles. I had no idea that picnic would become the dividing line between the life I thought I had and the one I'd be forced to survive. I wish I could say there was a clear moment where everything felt wrong. Something obvious, something undeniable, but that's not how it happened. It was more like a slow drip of unease I kept wiping away. In the weeks leading up to that picnic, my wife felt distant. Not cold, just slightly elsewhere. Like she was always half a thought away from the room we were in. She still kissed me goodbye, still asked about my day, still tucked the kids in. But there was a tension in her, like she was holding something back. I told myself it was stress, work, parenting, life. The excuses came easily because I wanted them to. My brother started texting her directly instead of going through me. Again, not strange on paper. They were family. They coordinated things for the kids. Or that's what I told myself. I remember seeing his name pop up on her phone late at night once. I asked what he needed. She said he was just venting about being lonely. I felt a flicker of something then. Jealousy? Discomfort? I swallowed it. There were moments where I caught them laughing together in the kitchen, voices low, bodies angled toward each other in a way that felt intimate. When I walked in, the laughter would stop. She'd ask me something mundane, like whether we needed more milk. I hated myself for noticing. I remember lying awake one night, staring at the ceiling, thinking, if something were wrong, I'd know. She wouldn't do that to me. He wouldn't do that to me. That belief became my anchor and my blindfold. By the time the picnic arrived, I had already trained myself not to question what was right in front of me. I showed up smiling, carrying coolers and folding chairs, completely unaware that the worst day of my marriage had already begun. The picnic itself started like every other family gathering we'd ever had. Kids screaming, adults pretending they weren't exhausted, someone already complaining about ants. I remember thinking the air felt lighter near the lake, like nothing bad could happen in a place that open. At some point, I went to help my cousin unload food from her car. It couldn't have been more than 10 minutes. When I came back, my wife and brother were gone. I didn't panic right away. I figured they'd taken the kids to the restroom or walked down to the water, but my kids were still at the blanket, eating chips, sticky-fingered and oblivious. I asked my mom if she'd seen them. She shrugged and said something about them grabbing drinks. Another 5 minutes passed, then 10. That's when the unease hit me, sharp and cold. I remember scanning the park, my eyes snagging on every couple, every shadow between trees. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Still, I stood up and walked toward the wooded path near the edge of the picnic area. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing. Maybe proof that I was crazy. Instead, I heard laughter first. Quiet. Familiar. I followed the sound and saw them, my wife and my brother, standing too close. His hand was on her arm. Her face looked different. Soft. Open. The look she used to give me when we were alone. Then she kissed him. Not a quick mistake, not an accident. A deliberate, lingering kiss. I froze. My body wouldn't move. My brain refused to catch up to my eyes. I remember thinking, this isn't happening. This can't be happening. But it was. And I was standing there watching my life split cleanly in two. I don't remember walking toward them, but suddenly I was there. My foot snapped a twig, or maybe I made a sound, I don't know. What I do know is the way they both jumped apart like guilty teenagers. My wife's face drained of color. My brother actually said my name out loud, like that somehow made it better. Explain, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was flat, calm in a way that scared even me. My wife started crying immediately. Big, shaking sobs. She reached for me, then stopped herself like she remembered she'd already crossed a line she couldn't uncross. It's not what it looks like, she said. I laughed. I couldn't help it. A short, broken laugh that came out wrong. I just watched you kiss my brother. So, tell me what it looks like. My brother tried to speak. I cut him off. How long? I asked. That was the only question that mattered. They didn't answer right away. That silence told me everything. Since the spring, my wife whispered. It wasn't supposed to happen. We tried to stop. Tried. I felt something inside me collapse, not explode, collapse, like a building giving up on itself. I asked where the kids were. She said with my mom. Like that made this moment less obscene. People were laughing somewhere behind us. Plates clinking. Life continuing. I walked away because I didn't trust myself to stay, because I was afraid of what I might do if I kept standing there staring at the two people who had just destroyed me with their honesty. That kiss wasn't the betrayal, the truth was. I sat in my car for a long time. I don't know how long. The windows were down and I could hear kids laughing somewhere and the splash of water at the lake, a dog barking. Normal sounds from a normal day that no longer belonged to me. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't start the engine at first. I remember gripping the steering wheel and thinking, this is what shock feels like. Not screaming, not crying, just this hollow buzzing in my chest like something vital had been unplugged. Anger came in waves. Hot, sharp, then gone, then sadness, then disbelief all over again. I kept replaying the kiss in my head like if I watched it enough times it would turn into something else. A misunderstanding, a bad joke, anything but what it was. Eventually, my wife knocked on the window. I almost didn't roll it down. She looked small, broken. That hurt more than I expected. "Please," she said, "we need to talk." I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to drive away and never come back. Instead, I unlocked the door. That still feels like a failure. She kept saying she was sorry. Over and over, like the words could rewind time. I asked questions I didn't really want the answers to. Did they love each other? Had they slept together? Did she ever think about our kids when she was with him? She cried harder. She didn't answer everything. When we drove home, it was silent. The kids sang in the back seat, unaware their world had just cracked. I stared at the road and wondered how something so fragile could have held my entire life together. That night, after the kids were asleep, everything finally spilled out. There was no dramatic setup, no calm discussion, just two people sitting at the kitchen table under harsh light, saying things that would permanently change how we saw each other. I asked her to tell me everything. Not the soft version, not the version that made her look better. Everything. She hesitated. That hesitation hurt almost as much as the truth. She admitted they'd been emotionally close for months. Long talks, texts late at night, complaining about me, about feeling lonely, about feeling seen. Then it crossed a line. One night when I was working late, he came over. She swore the kids were asleep. She swore it only happened once. I don't know why that word, once, made me angrier than anything else. I asked my brother to come over. That was a mistake, but I needed to see his face when he couldn't hide behind distance. When he walked in, he couldn't even look at me. I said things I'd never said to him before. Things meant to hurt. He cried, actually cried, said he loved her. Said it just happened. Like betrayal was weather. At one point, my wife begged me to stop yelling because she didn't want the kids to hear. That irony almost broke me. I realized then that I was the only one in the room who hadn't made a choice, and somehow I was the one paying for all of them. That night ended with my brother leaving and my wife sleeping on the couch. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how love could rot so quietly. The days that followed felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. I went to work. I answered emails. I made lunches. On the outside, I functioned. Inside, everything was chaos. I kept swinging between wanting to hold my wife and wanting to disappear. I hated her for what she'd done. I hated myself for still loving her. That contradiction lived in my chest constantly, exhausting me. She tried to be perfect, overly attentive, overly apologetic. She deleted her messages, blocked my brother, gave me her phone whenever I asked. None of it made me feel better. Trust doesn't come back because someone hands you a device. I replayed every moment of our marriage, wondering which parts were real. Were our kids conceived in love or convenience? Was I ever enough? Those thoughts poisoned everything. The worst part was the shame. Not hers. Mine, I felt stupid, weak, like everyone could see what I couldn't. Family gatherings stopped. Friends noticed the distance. I lied for her, for us. I hated myself for that too. At night, I'd lie next to her and feel miles away. Her breathing sounded foreign. Sometimes she'd reach for me in her sleep and I'd flinch. I realized then that betrayal doesn't just break trust, it fractures identity. I no longer knew who I was as a husband, a brother, a man, and there was no map for finding myself again. We tried to keep things normal for the kids. That was the lie we told ourselves, that if we smiled enough, packed enough snacks, showed up to school events, they wouldn't notice the cracks running through our home. They noticed. Kids always do. Our oldest started acting out. Anger over small things. Slamming doors. Our youngest became quiet, clingy, afraid to sleep alone. They didn't know what had happened, but they felt the tension in the air like humidity before a storm. My brother vanished from their lives overnight. One day he was the fun uncle. The next he was a name no one mentioned. They asked where he went. We said he was busy. I hated lying to them, but the truth felt too heavy for their small hands. Family gatherings became landmines. My parents sensed something was wrong, but didn't know what. I wasn't ready to tell them. Part of me wanted to protect my wife. Another part wanted to expose everything and let the shame burn its way out. My mental health spiraled. I couldn't sleep. I lost weight without trying. Every quiet moment turned into an interrogation of my own memories. Therapy helped a little, but even there I felt ridiculous saying, "My wife fell in love with my brother." It sounded like something from a bad movie, except it was my life. The hardest consequence wasn't the anger or the sadness. It was the constant vigilance, watching, wondering, never fully relaxing. I realized then that even if we stayed together, something vital had already been buried. We tried counseling. That was my idea, which still surprises me. I think part of me needed to believe there was a version of this story where everything didn't end in total destruction. Sitting in that room felt surreal. A stranger listening while my wife explained how she felt lonely, how she felt disconnected, how my brother understood her. Every word felt like another small cut. Not deep enough to kill me, but enough to make me bleed. The therapist asked me how I felt. I didn't know how to answer. Angry, devastated, numb. All of it felt inadequate. My wife promised it was over, that she chose me, that she'd do anything to rebuild trust. She cried a lot. I don't doubt her remorse, but remorse doesn't undo choices. It just follows them. At home, we tried to act like a couple again. Date nights, forced conversations, physical closeness that felt awkward and fragile. Sometimes it almost felt normal, and that scared me more than the bad days, because normal meant forgetting, and forgetting felt like betraying myself. I kept imagining them together, wondering if she compared us, wondering if I was just the safer option, the father of her children, the one who stayed. Every step forward felt like walking on glass. One wrong thought, one wrong memory, and I was back at that picnic, watching her lips touch his. I started to understand something painful. Fixing a marriage after betrayal isn't about forgiveness. It's about deciding how much pain you're willing to live with. Months passed, but time didn't heal anything. It just buried the pain deeper, where it could rot quietly. I became someone I didn't recognize. Suspicious, hyper-aware. I noticed everything. Her tone, her pauses, the way she reacted when my phone buzzed versus when hers did. I hated that version of myself, but I couldn't turn it off. Trust, once shattered, doesn't grow back evenly. It comes back crooked, if at all. My wife tried hard. I'll give her that. She checked in constantly, asked how I was feeling, reassured me when I spiraled. But there was a limit to how much reassurance I could accept before it felt empty. At some point, apologies stopped sounding like care and start sounding like noise. We stopped talking about my brother entirely. His name became radioactive. But silence didn't erase him. He lived in the space between us, in every argument and every quiet evening. I wondered if she missed him. I never asked. I was afraid of the answer. Intimacy faded, not because I didn't want her, but because I didn't feel safe wanting her. Vulnerability felt dangerous, like handing someone a weapon they'd already used on you once. Sometimes I caught her watching me with sadness, like she knew she'd broken something she couldn't fix. Other times, I felt resentment in her, like she was tired of paying for a mistake she wanted to move past. That's when it hit me. We weren't healing together. We were surviving separately under the same roof. And survival isn't love. It just looks like it from far away. The thought of leaving didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in quietly, disguised as exhaustion. I noticed it first on a random Tuesday. Nothing dramatic happened. No argument. No revelation. I was just sitting in my car after work, engine off, staring at the house, and I felt dread. Not anger, not sadness, just a heavy resistance to walking back into a life that felt permanently damaged. That scared me more than anything else. I started imagining what separation would look like. Two houses, shared custody, explaining to the kids why daddy doesn't live here anymore, missing half their lives. The idea crushed me. I stayed because of them. I stayed because breaking up a family felt like admitting total failure. But staying was breaking me in slower ways. I realized I was constantly monitoring my emotions instead of living them, always asking myself if I was overreacting, if my pain was still valid months later. I felt pressure from her, from myself, to move on, to forgive properly, to stop bringing it up. One night, during another careful, restrained conversation about how far we'd come, I heard myself say, "I don't think I can do this anymore." The room went silent. She asked if I meant counseling. I shook my head. She asked if I meant a break. I shook my head again. I meant us. Saying it out loud felt like jumping off a cliff. I wasn't sure what was below. I just knew I couldn't keep standing on the edge pretending I was okay. For the first time since the picnic, the decision felt like mine. Telling the kids was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than confronting my wife, harder than seeing my brother again, harder than admitting to myself that my marriage was over. We didn't tell them everything. God, no. We told them Mom and Dad were having problems, that we both loved them, that none of this was their fault. Those last words felt especially important, like if we repeated them enough, they'd become armor. My oldest asked if it was because of Uncle Luckety Earl. The room went silent. I don't know how he knew. Maybe kids sense absence more sharply than adults. Maybe he'd noticed how abruptly my brother disappeared. Maybe he'd overheard something we thought was private. I said, "It's complicated," which felt like another lie. My wife cried for days, not loud, dramatic crying, quiet, exhausted grief. She begged me to reconsider, promised again that she'd do anything, that she'd spend the rest of her life making it up to me. I believed she meant it. I just didn't believe it would ever be enough. My parents found out soon after. The truth came out in fragments. Confusion, anger, disbelief. My mother kept asking what she'd done wrong raising us. My father stopped speaking to my brother entirely. Family gatherings dissolved overnight. I moved into a small apartment. Too quiet. Too empty. I slept on a mattress on the floor for weeks because buying furniture felt like admitting permanence. At night, I missed the sound of my kids breathing down the hall. I missed the version of my wife I thought I married. But I didn't miss the constant pain. That's how I knew I'd made the right choice, even if it didn't feel like a happy one. Divorce isn't one moment. It's 1,000 small losses spread out over time. The paperwork was straightforward. The emotions weren't. We agreed on custody without a fight, which almost made it worse. No villain, no courtroom drama. Just two people quietly accepting that something precious had died. The first night my kids stayed with her and not me, I sat on the floor and cried until my chest hurt. I wasn't crying because I missed my wife. I was crying because my life no longer made sense in the way it used to, because half my time was suddenly empty. My brother tried to contact me once. A long message about regret and accountability and how he was getting help. I didn't respond. I still don't know if silence is forgiveness or self-preservation. Maybe both. Sometimes I catch myself wondering what would have happened if I'd never walked down that path at the picnic, if ignorance would have been kinder. Then I remember the look on her face when she kissed him, how real it was, and I know the truth would have found me eventually. I've dated a little. Nothing serious. Trust feels like a foreign language now. I flinch at secrecy. I notice patterns I wish I didn't know how to see. But there's also relief, a quiet kind. I don't wake up anxious anymore. I don't scan rooms for danger. My home feels honest, even when it's lonely. Some nights I still miss her. Or maybe I miss the idea of her. the woman I believed in. Loss isn't always loud. Sometimes it just settles in and refuses to leave, and you learn to live around it. I don't tell this story for advice. I don't have any. I'm not sure there's a right way to survive something like this. I'm sharing it because carrying it alone started to feel heavier than the shame of saying it out loud. If I've learned anything, it's that betrayal doesn't just come from strangers. It comes from the people you trust the most. And when it does, it changes how you see everything. Love, family, loyalty, even yourself. I still question myself. I wonder if I could have been more attentive, more present, less predictable. Those thoughts show up uninvited, especially late at night. But I'm trying to stop rewriting history in ways that blame me for choices I didn't make. My kids are okay, not untouched, but resilient in ways that amaze me. We're honest with each other now in a way we weren't before. I tell them it's okay to feel confused. I tell them love is complicated. I tell them none of this is their fault, even when they already know it. I don't speak to my brother. I don't know if I ever will. Some bridges burn quietly. Without explosions, they just disappear. As for my ex-wife, I wish her peace. I truly do. I loved her once. Maybe I still do, in a distant, sad way. But love isn't enough when trust is gone. If you're reading this and something feels familiar, don't ignore that feeling. I did, and it cost me years of my life. Some truths hurt, but living without them hurts longer.